All right, everyone. This is, there we are. This is Smiles doing a rant. I did a little audio testing and I sounded, slightly like I was in a pool, but it seemed fine, question mark. So, uh, here we go. Let's see what we got. This is age 111, Space Angels. Oh, sorry, Age of Champions. Um, Preamble. Something about champions, playing it safe, being more good at stuff. Very nice. So, goals and change summary. The goal is to encourage kingdoms that can be 25 to be 25. And if you're not 25, you're just going to get less rewards. And suck it up. If you're good enough to get to a high rank, you're good enough to be 25. So figure it out. Um, Also, it wants to encourage more top end growth. I'm all for. I don't think growth is particularly hard. I also think growth is a lot easier when more people are going growth. It's actually usually harder for number one to stay number one when there's multiple contenders. But not always. Sometimes when multiple people are going for land, they all sort of feed the same kingdom, but that's usually user error. What else? Honorable mentions we'll get to. Land-based rewards we'll get to. Um, ceasefire rework, I think that's just for specific briefing. A buff to aggressive stance. And relations rework. So I think we get to all of that soon. What do we got? Iron Sword. Fight a lot of wars, well, at least 24 provinces. Warlord Banner. Have a lot of wars while being 25 provinces. Gauntlet. Don't be 25 provinces, but win a lot of wars against 25 provinces. Nice. Points rescaling. You will essentially be losing 20% of your bonus per person you're missing. And the actual war score is even worse on that front. So War Win Crown is essentially out of the question if you're not 25. Um, as for rewards, you can still make a pretty good honor play and I think land play by being sub 25. Because what you can do at 24, 23, 22 provinces is still just push super heavy science all age and stack up honor on TMs. Because you're going to get those easy wars, and now your kingdom total honor will be lower. But the difference between having a, shitload of barons and a shitload of lords as your core isn't a big factor in what wins. Whereas having, that extra honor tier or two and really big science focus on your TMs, once you then add up to 25 and you start getting the wars that matter, it's going to make a big difference. Um, all this will really do in terms of that early age running 22, 25 is it's going to keep the total honor a little lower in a kingdom, but if anything, that's just going to make it easier for them to farm a little longer. So, um, I don't think this will actually really stop kingdoms from making a play for land or honor as lower than 25 to start the age. Just going to say it. It'll completely revamp war tier, like war win score focus. But, like, even this, like, you're only sort of behind one war of value if you're starting at 23. But if you have three easy wars instead of two hard wars, it's going to happen in the same time frame. You're going to get the same total bonuses. And if anything, you're going to have more opportunity to be greedy. So, um, Yeah, I'm of two minds of this. I like the idea. I think it'll mostly work, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the strongest kingdoms still start 21 to 24 provinces, honestly. Um, Otherwise, you're going to have way less big fat kingdoms that show up at 20 provinces in the top 10 rankings that just feed land to the growth kingdoms. So I think that's going to make growth kingdoms actually have to, wave and hostile, legitimate high province count targets rather than just feeding off of, fat micros war after war. Because your 20-man kingdoms that end up top 10 ranks, they feed just a shitload of land to growth. Um, and that's just the way of things, and that's kinda lame because that's not actually, fighting strong people. Like those people literally and intentionally want to get land waved most of the time so that they get knocked back down. And so it's sort of a symbiotic slash parasitic relationship there. I don't think people actually want. Anyways, I think that is worth testing. I don't think we need to revise this, victory rewards thing because I don't think it'll work exactly. Just run it for an age or two, and if people are still exploiting the system, you change things again. Like, things don't have to be fixed in 1 or 2 ages, but as long as they're making progress every age or two, that makes me happy. Land-based growth rewards. Um, what this kind of is just a server-wide science buff to everyone. I would say on this, the science efficiency should be knocked down to 5%. 10% is too strong. Everything else there is maybe fine. Um, that's it. But like if you're in a situation where the biggest kingdom's 110,000 acres and waving down 10-20% against everyone, like they're just going to be way stronger at that specific benchmark. Whereas like the honor bonuses, everyone's going to get, to 50,000 acres early, I think, just because everyone, even shitty people and small people, are science whores at heart. Um, But yeah, I'd say probably knock down that science efficiency a little bit down to like 5%, or lower it to like a different level. I don't know if you want to keep the 10%, but you don't want sort of a larger milestone to be an instant effect type thing. Um, Also, I think that this should be sort of fixed or changed when you're in war. Um, because I don't think you should be in a war where, the difference between being 109 and 110,000 acres actively like wins you the war type thing. So yeah, I think this one bonus at 110,000 acres needs to be changed, or else it's going to be a little awkward. We'll just leave it at that. Individual land-based rewards. Um, I like all of this. Yeah, with that 5% SE already at the 7,000 acre mark, you don't want cows with, plus 15% science efficiency where no other province can really fight against that. That's like being a whole human. So if both of those are at 5%, I think that's all right. But I would prefer science efficiencies to be mid-range bonuses rather than high-end bonuses because that's gonna be too much of a leveraging effect. uh, is what it is. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have a perfect suggestion for that right now. I'd just say that's where your focus should be if you want to balance things. But I mostly like the look of this. I wouldn't change much other than that. Da, 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 da. Yeah, there's just no more griefing period in war. It's lame. It's not the utopia I want, but it's the utopia we have, I guess. I mean, lame, but most people aren't actively engaging in this. That's it. Um, I don't love the forced ceasefire system in general. I think it ruined diplomacy for 90% of the game. And diplomacy back in the day was one of the big draws, I think, for a lot of people in Utopia is that, people talk about the, social aspect within their kingdom and, a little bit within the community, but what about the like intrigue and the like, diplomatic and like, sales and marketing that was going on? Like, closing a really big deal at work. Like it was a thrill for a lot of people. I've been in that situation, you're bluffing a little bit or you're lying, misleading to get a ceasefire to convince someone to stop. And like that was something that really separated top and mid tier kingdoms because every mid tier and ghetto trash would be like, "You better stop hitting us, or we're gonna raise into your wars." But like they didn't ever, and if they did, they did it badly. And like if they did it badly and gave you a button that you exploited. Like you know, that's a thing. Aggressive stance changes. I do like this because almost no one was using aggressive unless they were like about to start a war. The peaceful cycle was a little too strong. That's it. Also, the duration on aggressive being lowered from 2 days to 1.5 days is interesting. I kind of like that because you don't usually need 4 waves of aggressive. 3 waves of aggressive is probably fine. It's also just very strong. Um, Having minus 10% attack time on aggressive means you can do essentially 12-hour waves with no racks, no avian, no tact. So this is a really big quality of life change for like clerics and warriors and hybrids. Also, no more. I think you used to lose extra, now you're losing less. So that's also very nice. Na-na-na-na. Yeah, relations change. So I like that. Through you guys. I already would regularly hang multiple hostiles and it would get a little bit annoying having to like hit people 1 or 2 times every couple days to keep the hostile, just to be like, hey guys, you can declare war whenever you want. We're getting peppered by ops by another kingdom. We have no land incoming. We're not prepared for you at all. You could have been storing gold for days and exploring. We'd have no idea. But no one ever actually takes those wars. People are embarrassing. Embarrassing, I say. Anyways, uh, you know, that was 13 minutes and we haven't even gotten into races and personalities. So where are we at? We have an insanely fast avian. That is crazy. Um, is quick feet 10 or 15% right now? I don't know. Let's double check. I want to say it was moved to 15% to sync with Act, but I don't know if that got re-nerfed. Do a little this. Quick feet, yeah, 90%, I think is what that means. Yeah, 10%. Um, so you've got a minus 33% attack time avian. So you're looking at 8 hours base in war, which is the perfect time. Other people have 12, you have 8. That means you're getting 50% more hits in. So you need to be nerfed to accommodate for that. I don't think they are. I think looking at this, Avian looks pretty fucking strong. Um, so I'd say Avian with this set of changes, unless everything else has been nerfed or buffed to compensate. I would say Avian's pretty overpowered looking at that. I would say you could probably put Avian at a 9-9 O spec D spec and they'd still be strong. That's how strong this Avian looks to me. You can't just be giving people 8-hour attack times with no real nerf. I mean, 20% casualties sucks, but you can build hospitals, you can run cleric, you can run stalwart. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Dark Elf. Dark Elf taking quite a big nerf. Going from no rune cost to half rune cost is huge. Like that's, I mean, they're still very good on runes and efficient and all that, but yeah, that's a huge nerf to them. Now they've got to run, 10% towers, or you have to have a kingdom built around having towers. Um, a lot of kingdoms this age were using Dark Elf for most of their TM, and it was a lot of it to do with the rune costs. Um, do they have other buffs or nerfs to accommodate? Looks like they have slightly better WPA. They lost Magic Ward, which I believe is now Mystic only. Um, their ability's the same. I believe their military's the same. So, um, they gained their building efficiency back. So that's nice. That almost accommodates 10% towers to fit in the runes. So I'd say that's close to a buff for Dark Elf. Um, it's slightly nerfed in the early game. I'd say it's buffed in the mid game and late game. So I think that's a decent change. Um, I didn't see any Dark Elves that I thought were effective hybrids. Um, that just they don't have the military. The 10D spec is too hard with nothing that really helps their population. They still want quite a bit of TPA. They still want quite a bit of WPA. Um, and in order to be an effective hybrid, they're going to be stuck at like 3 TPA, 3 WPA to fit in that extra military. And at that point, you're one massacre away. You're every heretic or rogue or mystic's going to be able to cast on you anyways. So while you'll be in a situation where you can probably abuse other core pretty well, I'm not in love with it. So I'm not saying it's not workable, but in terms of military numbers, they either have not enough offense for anyone to care or not enough defense to keep them safe, has been my experience. Um, the only hybrid I saw this age that I thought was any strong was 4-4 was running a halfling rogue hybrids that seemed to have enough defense and offense at the same time. Part of that was also that they just seem to maintain a big size, and that helps a lot as well. So, yeah, that's. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think that's about the same in relative to how strong Avian looks right now. Yeah, Avian got an extra elite offense. Their elite's basically free at 800 for some reason. Their birth rate went up, their attack speed went up. Sure, you lost quick feet or clear sight, but like, goddamn, that's crazy. And their ability remains very useful. Especially with the flat 8-hour attack time. So every third attack, you're going to be able to use that ability. Dryad, complete rework. Um, don't know how to judge this exactly. My assumption is it's very strong. I don't understand how the stables work. That's basically all I have to say. Um, I don't get it. Um, I asked a question, but then I didn't look and read the answer. So I think without this stable, they're still very strong. Something we've seen in the past when we have slow, high offense attackers is that they're just strong. Um, you can just run barracks and haste and or tactician, and the attack speed is pretty well mitigatable, and you just have a shitload of offense. That's good enough. The draft rate bonus is pretty insane. It's sort of equivalent to like 50% draft cost, but it's also probably better in End of War Ceasefire. Like you can draft so late with that bonus and train so late with this, and if you're going to be running haste anyways, like you're going to have like 84 hours of full eco in End of War Ceasefire before you have to like train and draft and shit. It's going to be very strong. You have Ghost Workers and Clear Sight and incredible spells. Um, so yeah, I think Dryad looks very strong. I think Dryad Warrior, Dryad Tech, Dryad Cleric are all going to be fine. I would really suggest that you run Haste or Barracks on your build, regardless of your personality. Um, it's going to be really helpful. Attack speed's one of the best things in the game. It's why we see so many successful tactician and avian kingdoms age after age after age after age. Um, so yeah, that's what I would suggest. And I think with that elite not running the stables, you're going to be very strong. Um, in relevance to the avians, you're not as good as the avians. I'm assuming the avians get balanced, then this is going to be in a very strong spot. Um, Also, presumably, this is actually valuable in some degree. If it's not, well, then whatever. But if you also add that in, yeah, very strong. This level of offense. And these are really good eco buffs for exactly getting a lot of elites. Um, yep. Dwarf looks identical? Question mark. They lost 1 point on their elite defense. They lost 10% construction time. Um, in context of slightly overpowered avians, dwarf is probably weaker, but almost every kingdom ran some dwarves in the kingdom for the ability and just for runes. They remain strong and good at that. Um, with a totally reasonable offense, dwarf's in a good spot. I don't think dwarf is overpowered. I don't think people have to run more than 3 or 4 dwarves, but dwarf is strong. Elf. Elf is interesting. I didn't see any elf last age. I was gonna run elf and then I didn't. I was convinced to run dark elf instead. I think that was correct as well. I'm pretty happy with my dark elves. So what is it that elf has? They have insane magic. Um, like insane magic. That's really high WPA, of course. The extra mana for tick is insane for both heretics and mystics and rogues and everything you want. Um, do 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 do. This ability is kind of scary. Um, the wording on this doesn't make sense, and I'm surprised it hasn't been fixed because changes have been out for at least a day or half a day. Um, Successful offensive spell. Is that spells? How long does it last? It lasts on the province for 6 tick, but how long does the ability last? Does it happen to your first province you cast a spell on, or everyone? Can I blanket people with this? Does it last 1 tick, or 6, or 8, or what's going on here? Um, but this is going to be insane. Um, this is going to be basically a straight counter to heretics. If you got to be nightmaring with 3 manas, it's going to be impossible. This is also a huge buff to chaining because you can make it so you're only going to get 2/3 the landlusts. And since this isn't even a spell, you can't Mystic Vortex it off if you were trying to be sneaky. So you're going to be in a situation where everyone has 1 token elf mystic or elf heretic, I think. And yeah, if you can just maintain this on heretics before your chains, even potentially on mystics because you've got 40% WPA. Yeah, very, 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 very strong. Um, Thieves' Den suck. The 10D spec is really rough. You're not unbreakable like ever. Um, so this is the sort of build where you just skip thieves and you're just all magic all the time. And then maybe you pick up thieves as you get really good science or honor, but you can just go 30% watchtowers, 30% forts, and 20 D-specs break or 2 TPA or whatever, and be pretty happy, I think. Um, again, the 10 D-spec is just brutal. It's brutal for Dark Elf as well. It's it's a struggle out there to have enough offense or defense. Avians are going to crush you. Dwarves are going to crush you. Dryads are going to crush you. And we'll see what else will crush you. But um, insane benefits to the elf. The penalty isn't the end of the world. Having presumably 8% thieves' dens instead of 10 is, a 2% cost to you. Um, I think mostly this is to stop elf rogues from being really strong, question mark, but I think even elf rogues, just without the +1 D spec, are going to be struggling. Um, and you can still run an elf rogue, you're just going to be less likely to do anything but Night Strike. So, yeah, there you have it. I would say this is certainly a buff over um, this. This was effectively +2 mana tick. Now you're looking at even higher magic effectiveness, and you're also looking at this ability, which is going to be very tactically strong. Now, if you have a shitload of elf, this ability loses value, but as a token elf or a couple elves, that ability is insanely strong. Very looks very similar. I don't know what changed. I did see that they have Revelation now. I think that's the only change. Revelation and no, Pitfalls is same. Same. They lost Chastity. They gained Pitfalls. No, they lost Chastity. They gained Revelation and Animate Dead. Okay. Um, very strong. We saw almost every top kingdom run Fey Mystic. I don't think that'll change. It's just really strong. Fairy has the best defense of any TM. I do see they have a slight nerf to the cost of their elites. That's probably a good thing about how strong they are. Um, Revelation on Fairy is a really significant buff for a TM. So if you compare that to Dark Elf, who is the other half of TMs I saw this age, I think Fairy's getting the benefit here more than anyone. And I think you're still going to primarily see Fairy over Elf in most roles, mana related. Yeah. Halfling! I only saw a couple halflings. I only remember really interacting with 4/4s halflings, and they weren't even pures, but they seemed pretty dang strong. Um, so I don't think anything changed in halfling. Train time change doesn't matter. Same elite. They got their +1 D spec back. So this is a huge buff to Halfling. I think Halfling's by far your strongest rogue. I think Halfling like this is strong enough to be a hybrid. I think Halfling like this is strong enough to be a Mystic or Heretic or whatever it wants. Yeah, you sort of change Dark Elf without buffing it. You buff Fairy a fair bit. You really buff Halfling. And now we'll see if other core buffs are as hard. That can still work if you've got strong TMs and stronger core, but Dwarf didn't really get a buff, so maybe not. But you have those crazy avians. I don't know. Human looks completely changed. So human lost their science efficiency completely, which is a pretty shitty deal for them. They're gaining revelations. They're losing reflect magic. So, um, and their WPA is down to minus 25%. Their offense and defense is reworked too. So essentially just a completely new race. Um, Big income bonus is nice. Building efficiency only on those builds is interesting. I'd say, the high end, you have a cumulative 50% TG castle barracks and hospital, so it's effectively a 7 to 8% building efficiency buff. Okay. Strategic reserves. Trad marches give you 3 ticks of science, 1% peasants. This happens in and out of war. I don't know exactly how much science that is relative to, say, a learn. Um, let me go check. I'm making, you know, 4,500 science a tick. If someone learned me, they're probably getting at least 100,000. So 3 ticks. Yeah, it's not nearly as big as a learn would be. But the fact that you're getting free science in war, let's say you're hitting in a min time war, say you're hitting, say, 4 waves, 3 generals, 36 ticks of science in a war, that's not bad. Um, it's capped at 40 ticks of science or 40 hits. If it's 40 ticks of science, yeah, that's about what I said, anyways. So yeah, it's sort of like double books during a war. 1% max peasants. I'm not sure how that works out either. Like that seems like it's gonna get you into a sketchy spot with overpop, but maybe you just live with it because eco is good combined with income and stuff. And then, of course, you get your. Can you overpop yourself with that? I suppose, of course, you could. Um, Insane military stats. Like, not insane, like the max offense isn't that high, but you can compensate for that. And you replenish your O specs pretty easily. Uh, huh. And it's funny because it sort of means you have to hit in range in war too. It's gonna be a bitch for war leaders, so they're like targeting people, and people are like, "No, I need a better target. My target's 115%. I need to hit in range for my ability." That's how my kingdom sounds, by the way. Um, Human seems strong. The elite offense is high enough to use situationally. Um, People are gonna fucking suicide, and there's no way you can help it, but you lose a lot of science effect. It's rough. Like, I look at this and I'm thinking it's gonna be so good, but without that science effect, it's quite a bit different. So, is what it is. I guess we don't really have a sage type thing in these changes. I like humans. If you do focus on science, you do focus on hitting, could be all right. You won't do as good as with you will with learns, but you can find a way to make it work. Um, huh. Orcs. Orcs, I think, are getting a wee bit of a nerf. 5% gains nerf, 25% draft nerf, so their draft's twice as much as it was, basically still free, same spells, same ability, and but horribly nerfed on building efficiency. They do gain some of those credits back. I think this is probably enough to make orcs feel balanced. Would assume that they're still picked by every land kingdom. They're probably still the strongest other than Avian. But it requires a very specific style of play most people are kind of bad at. Um, to totally utilize all of this. So my guess would be that they aren't overpicked, but any strong kingdom using them appropriately will do incredibly well. So we'll see. Building efficiency hurts a lot, but I still think, I mean, that just shows how frickin' strong Orc was this age if I think they take 3 nerfs and are still worth playing. Um, yeah. Undead, at a glance, unplayable because they don't have any of those minus casualties we love. They have Plague inert. They have they make people lose building efficiency, and it forces people to plague them, or cure them. So, like, that's rough, but you can kind of tank it maybe. And if you're not doing spread attacks, like you're just gonna be overdoing it. Um, like really, I just don't think they have enough offense to justify it. Like they have basically the same offense as Avian. Avian's gonna be hitting 50% more with no penalties. They've got 2 massive penalties, and they take full losses. The casualty converts into soldiers is nice, but what are you doing with the soldiers, right? I don't know. Um, yeah. Um, I think Undead's probably the weakest core. I think if they just had a little more something, they'd be very strong. And you want to be careful with auto mini plague. Um, but yeah, I think Undead's probably the weakest here. I think if they had that, built-in sustain or something, they'd be looking on very strong, but don't love them. That's a lot of penalties. They've got some good bonuses. You're going to be crushing people with minus BE and food. They're going to be starving and shit, but is that enough to account for really having no big benefit? You know, I don't think so. But I love Plague, and having double Plague sounds fun. Keep in mind, people are going to be trying to cure both plagues, and so they're going to be casting even more Nature's Blessing. Maybe you combine this with elves, giving people +1 self spell mana cost. It's going to be brutal. So if you end up seeing a lot of elves and undead in the Kingdom World survey, maybe pick some clerics. You're probably going to want them. Um, but 20% science efficiency is sort of livable. We've seen it done. Rune cost, well, it's not like they're going to be casting rituals, so or nature's blessing or whatever. Um, Makes it really hard to land lust though. That's the thing. And they have no real anti-chain. They don't have anything helping them not get chained. They don't have minus casualties. They don't really have that much build space. 7% from farms is it. Um, hmm. Also, are Fairy just back to having all racial self spells? Because I noticed Revelations and Animate Dead on Human and Undead, and now Avian has them both, and nobody had Chastity. So they lost that. That's nice. Artisan looks unchanged? Question mark. They lost their building durability, and their free credits got nerfed. Artisans seem pretty strong, but I almost only saw them on Dwarfs. Dwarf Artisan seemed strong. I assume Dwarf Artisan will remain just as strong for its role of rune bitch, money bitch, and is there another reason? Fort raises, I guess. Cleric. Cleric loses the minus self spell or minus spell damage. They gain hospital efficiency, so it's good and bad. I think they have the same spells. Yeah, same everything. Love this 10% rune refund. It's five. It turns into a 5% rune refund, which is just so useless. They just can't help but adding little things. If you're doing a big hospital centric build, I think Cleric's better than it was. Otherwise, I think Cleric's a little worse. That built in casting resistance was really nice against Fireball and Nightmare. But, eh. I mean, I think it's, a sweet pair with Avian, want those minus losses, and certain other races. So, yeah, I think the Cleric's just fine. You've got Divine Shield, good enough, right? Um, is that a nerf to sort of a nerf to Heretic, sort of a buff. Built-in Mage's Fury, so there's a lot more racial diversity allowed with Heretic, which is nice. Um, extra WPA built in is nice, but the rob damage and finesse was really strong, and their bonus damage getting nerfed a little bit's lame. I'd still Heretic's still in a good spot. I think you'll just take the WPA and run with it. Um, you can lose the rest. It's not the biggest deal in the world. Um, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No big deal. Mystic, same. Access to one less spell? Oh, no more Mage's Fury built into Mystic, so you've got to pick that racially, which I guess is a nerf to Elf by quite a bit. I mean, Elf has their own WPA built in, but uh, that's a pretty big nerf to Mystic. It really tightens the preferred races on it quite a bit. So your hybrid Mystics are a lot worse. Elf Mystic isn't having plus 80% WPA. So, okay, I see it. Rune spell savings is fine. Um, Bringing back old school chastity is nice. That's the only chastity, right? So, I mean, it's weird to call this a mystic passive when they're the only ones with chastity. You could just revert chastity to how it used to be. Um, but we'll call it that. And that magic word change is actually not a benefit. The duration on magic word is important. Um, Whatever. Yeah, overall, pretty huge nerf to Mystic. The Mystic ability last age to just gut rituals was definitely too strong, and that's the nerfed version of it. It used to be way too strong, and then it was just too strong. Um, but losing Mage's Fury, losing their passive, huge nerfs to Mystic. Of course, they're still just great at, doing what they do, which is having a ton of WPA, casting meteor showers. Old school chastity, super strong. Might be your way to help counter avians? Question mark. But um, Little bit of a kick in the nuts to Mystic. I was thinking about hybrid Mystics, but I didn't realize they had lost the Mage's Fury there, so maybe I will change my mind on that. Rogue is identical? Question mark. Yeah, Rogue's identical. Rogue's very strong. Rogue's in the same spot it's been for a while. With Halfling getting a despec buff, I think Halfling Rogues are crazy strong this upcoming age. Not a lot to say there. Tacticians. Um, the the weird massacre buff to Tactician was kind of shitty, so whatever. Tacticians otherwise unchanged. Their new ability is they just get a lot of free WPA calcs. What does this mean? It means a lot of free WPA calcs. I don't know. Um, it's weird because like you're better off just spamming SOT until this procs than you are ever trying to actually get a WPA calc with your things. So, nice, fine. I don't know why it is also proccing on attacks, considering how much less you attack than how much you do intel. But yeah, it's a nice buff. It's it's not really a mechanical buff, but it's a buff. Um, this can turn into a lot of extra stealth on your core, but if all your core does is intel anyways, it's not a lot. But if you can find a way for your tacticians to be night striking, use hidden strats, massacre a target, even if it's just a shitty side target to NS, you have a lot more stealth. Warrior, unchanged, tiny buff to prisoner strength. Um, their stupid conscription ability is gone, which is nice. Now their ability, you have a chance to do 20% military casualties. It can only target once per province. Per target province? How does that work with multiple warriors? I'm going to assume that only it's one per warrior per target, which only means that like you can't double proc it, but if you have a bunch of warriors chaining someone, like on average, it's going to even out, sort of. Um, so yeah, that only really acts like plus 7% military casualties, but also you kill sold stacks. Sold stack thing isn't too interesting either. Um, the only way that sold stack thing is interesting is like getting a shitload of prisoners is kind of fun. So, and it only works on trads as well. I don't know why. Why doesn't it work on massacres or raises? Nobody can tell me. So another age with a super lame warrior buff or ability, but whatever. Um, I think warrior's actually in a good spot with avian how it is and dryad and human how they are. Um, I still think people are gonna by and large pick tactician and attack speed sort of always wins, but I think warrior's in a decentish spot here. Um, if only because I'm becoming disillusioned with fancy play. I've done some fancy things the last few ages, and I kind of want to just get back to hitting things hard, if you know what I mean. That and I hate fast attack speeds. I just want to go to bed, man. Raiders, our very final thingy-mabob. 10% military efficiency, so you're basically a warrior. Keeper Thieves is not very significant. Plus 25% TPA is pretty significant. No thief losses, period, is super significant. Like, that's crazy huge. Because then you can skip thieves' dens. Um, and you can night strike really hard with no worries. Um, Again, this cooldown per target province, I don't know if that means that each raider can apply it once, or if each target province can only have it once. Um, in my head, for raider, it makes sense only the target province can have it once. But with the warrior, this makes absolutely no sense to me that it would have a cooldown because it's not that big of a deal to have a third of the time 20% extra kills. Why would that have a limit? Because that averages out to 7% bonus kills. We've had plenty of races and personalities with permanent plus 15, plus 20% kills. Why does this ability, which is, it's the unique passive, it's the new big thing in Utopia, it should be substantial and exciting and fun. Why would that not be very strong and have a weird cooldown? That doesn't make sense. So you take the interpretation of this cooldown that makes a little more sense, but then the wording on that's here, and that's not what makes sense anymore. It makes sense to me you don't want watchtowers going to zero. So, um, anyways, I think Raiders very strong for the play style. I think the average person sucks at the play style. The average kingdom sucks at the play style. My kingdom sucks at the play style. I can't fucking get my core to night strike properly to save my life. It's fucking brutal. Even if it's like legit the strongest thing you can do and you set up some easy ass target, they just don't do it or they do it wrong. They do it off timing. It's all wrong. Um, but this is really strong. Like imagine if you just have a couple raiders and you just massacre the enemy mystic or rogue. Well, not rogues, it's watchtower. You massacre a mystic or a heretic, even a core. You raise the core once or mass the core once before your night strike runs. The 25% watchtower efficiency nerf is like a really big blizzard sort of thing. And on top of that, you still have 10% offense. It's not 15% offense with another 10 to 15% offense from tactics, but it's something if you just want to mix one in. Um, and this will work. Like, there's no cooldown on this. There's cooldowns per target province, but there's no cooldown on the raider. So the raider can do it every wave. So, um, those are the changes, everyone. Thanks for listening to me. My takeaway is Avian seems extremely overpowered. What the fuck are you doing? Um, Dark Elf and Elf are probably gonna struggle relative to Fairy and Halfling. I think Fairy and Halfling and TMs in general seem quite a bit stronger because you have a nerf to Orcs, and I assume that Avian gets nerfed. And if you look at Undead and I think without the orcs, I just if you give a little buff to TMs, they start being really strong. You still have dwarves able to raise forts, and at any time that's in the game, no TM is really safe. But yeah, once the TMs get safe, they're really safe and they're really strong. Halflings and rogues remain insane. Uh, so yeah, interesting changes. I see a lot I like. I think it's pretty balanced. I would maybe fix like Avian either needs to lose significant offense or lose some attack time. It can't have really high offense and really good attack time. Duh. Um, I think Dark Elf's in a fine spot. I don't know what the hell this unique ability is, but I think Dryad's looking pretty good. Um, Dwarf, I think, is in a fine spot. The elf is very interesting. I think it's got to make concessions to lean into its strength, which I think is a great part of Utopia. Fairy and Halfling too. I think maybe the Halfling and Fairy are a little overtuned, as I've said. I wanna make Sci-Hor work with the human, but it's a little tough. They have no science efficiency buff, and they don't really have any great numbers here. Like, I just don't quite see it working. But also, you want to stay on the edge where you don't overdo it. Maybe if they had like 10% science efficiency or something, that'd be good. Um, but I've been really wanting to just have someone that can learn wave with O specs and stuff. So I might pick human anyways, but I don't think they're the strongest or too strong. I think the fact that Revelation is on cleric means that human really isn't much of a science race because other people can match you on cleric. Like I think a dwarf cleric's going to be just as good at science as a human, um, with more benefits, less penalties. Question mark. Orc, I think, is in a good spot. I think everything should be balanced to the level of orc, which is to say, I think avian needs a slight nerf. I think dryad probably needs a slight tiny buff, and I think undead needs a slight buff. And then we're looking good. Personalities are fine. Yeah, I would I would clarify these cooldowns, and I would just sort of fix up the warrior thing. Maybe get rid of no thieves lofts on espionage because they have this, and everyone's just gonna do 5 SOTs to get a WPA calc anyways, and fuck it, they can fail some SOTs. Who gives a shit, right? Am I wrong? Like I think spamming SOTs on someone as attack is literally easier than just getting an SOM, like a single SOM. So, like, I don't know, man. Yeah, that's the changes. I like race balance. I like personality balance. I love the focus on getting kingdoms to be and stay at 25 provinces. And I love the encouragement to grow. I think just worry about that science efficiency and everything else is good. And so, thank you everyone for listening. Maybe you should get something on here at 2,000 acres or 1,500 acres. Maybe just add in one extra slot there. Like the balance on this doesn't make sense. It's 3,000, 4,500, 6,000. That makes sense. It's 1,500 each time. Then it's 1,000 and then 2,000. Shouldn't that be 7,500 acres? Shouldn't there be a 1,500 here? So you can fix that up a bit. Um, cool. Well, thanks for listening to the rant, guys. Hopefully the audio's fine. I probably could have done more to figure that out, but I didn't. So that's the rant. Cheerio. Thanks for watching. Also, apparently my webcam works again.